There is a single verse in the Sermon on the Mount that has been used to convince abused spouses to stay in dangerous homes. It has been quoted to entire populations facing genocide. It has been reduced to a moral platitude about being nice to people who hurt you. It has been turned into wallpaper, a cliché that sounds profound but carries no actual weight in the real world. But that is not the full story. When Jesus told his followers to turn the other cheek, he was not commanding them to be passive. He was giving them a highly specific, subversive tactic to reclaim their human dignity. To understand this, you have to stand in a dusty courtyard in first-century Judea. You have to look at the crowd sitting on the hillside above the Sea of Galilee. They are not wealthy merchants or powerful religious leaders. They are farmers struggling to pay Roman taxes. They are fishermen taxed on their very catch. They are day laborers who stand in the market square at dawn, hoping someone hires them for a single coin. They live under the crushing weight of the Roman Empire. They also live under the heavy hand of their own religious elite. This society was built entirely on a strict hierarchy of honor and shame. At the very top were the Roman overlords. Below them were the wealthy landowners who collected the taxes. At the bottom were the indebted, the enslaved, and the destitute. Power was maintained through public displays of dominance. One of the most common displays was a physical strike. Here is where it gets deeper. Modern readers open their Bibles and read this instruction through a completely different cultural lens. We picture two equal citizens having a dispute on a modern street. We assume one throws a punch, and Jesus is simply telling us to take it. This assumption turns a brilliant psychological strategy into a promotion of victimhood. It strips the text of its original teeth and leaves behind a hollow demand for passive compliance. The common assumption is that Jesus is advocating for total withdrawal from conflict. It makes the teaching seem unrealistic or even cruel to anyone facing actual oppression. This is where most people stop and they miss everything. On the surface, the instruction seems to do exactly what we assume. If someone strikes you, you offer them an unprotected target. You absorb the violence without flinching. You do not retaliate. You simply endure the pain and show your attacker that their aggression cannot break your spirit. It looks like an invitation to be a martyr. It looks like spiritual bypassing. Most translations smooth this over. The original does not. The Greek text of Matthew's Gospel is incredibly precise about the physical mechanics of this moment. It does not just say to be struck. It specifies a slap on the right cheek. You have to think about the geometry of two men standing face to face. If a right-handed person strikes another person on the right cheek, it is almost certainly a backhand blow. In the ancient Near East, a backhand slap was not an expression of uncontrolled anger. It was a calculated statement of status. Masters backhanded slaves to keep them in line. Romans backhanded Jews to remind them of their place. Fathers backhanded children. Husbands backhanded wives. It was the blow of a superior to an inferior. Some scholars also suggest that the left hand was considered unclean in Jewish culture, reserved for tasks related to the bathroom. If that reading is accurate, the striker would only use the right hand. Now, follow the literal instruction of Jesus. You stand there after being backhanded. You slowly turn your head. You offer the left cheek. You force the striker to make a choice. They cannot backhand your left cheek with their right hand. The angles of the human shoulder and arm simply do not allow it. To strike that left cheek with the right hand, they must use an open-handed slap. In the first century, an open-handed slap was how you fought an equal. It was the blow you gave to a peer. By turning your head, you have robbed the aggressor of their ability to treat you as a subordinate. You have backed them into a social corner. If they hit you again, they must treat you as an equal. If they walk away, they lose face in front of everyone watching. Keep that detail in mind. It comes back. This cheek turning is not an isolated moment of cleverness in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus gives two more examples immediately after this one, and they all rely on the exact same logic. He tells a person being sued in court to hand over their inner garment when the creditor takes their outer garment. Imagine a poor Jewish farmer who is defaulted on a loan. He is dragged before a magistrate. His creditor demands the outer cloak as collateral. The clothing of a first-century peasant typically consisted of two main pieces, an outer cloak used for warmth and a thin inner tunic worn against the skin. Under ancient law, a creditor could take your outer coat as collateral for a debt, but the law explicitly protected your inner garment. By stripping off your underwear in the middle of a public courtroom, you exposed the cruelty of the system. Nakedness in ancient Judaism brought deep shame. but the shame fell on those who looked upon it and those who caused it. You bring absolute shame upon the creditor who is following the letter of the law while destroying a human life. He then tells a person forced to carry a Roman soldier's heavy gear for 1 mile to carry it for 2. Roman roads were marked with milestones. A soldier could tap you on the shoulder with the flat of his sword and demand you carry his pack for the next mile. A Roman legionary carried a marching pack that often weighed 60 to 80 pounds. It held heavy tent stakes, a cooking pot, 3 days of rations, and a saw. For an exhausted farmer, a single mile with this weight on a dusty road was absolute agony. Roman military law strictly prohibited a soldier from forcing a civilian to carry a pack for more than 1 mile. The penalty for the soldier was severe. By cheerfully carrying the bag a second mile, you put the soldier in violation of his own law. He will panic. He will beg you to drop the bag. The text suggests these are not 3 random sayings about being a good person. They form a unified teaching on how to weaponize compliance. The answer changes depending on which word you look at. Earlier in the same passage, Jesus tells his followers not to resist an evil person. The Greek word translated as resist is antistheni. Many scholars point out that this word literally means to stand against in a military formation. It is the word used for 2 armies marching toward each other and slamming their shields together. Jesus is not telling his followers to avoid conflict. He is telling them not to fight the empire on the empire's terms. He is telling them not to mount a violent rebellion that will simply get them crucified along the side of the road. This completely reframes the entire Sermon on the Mount. It is often misread as a list of private, internal moral rules. It is treated as a guide for how to feel peaceful inside while the world burns around you, but the original context implies something far more disruptive. Jesus was teaching a marginalized people how to stand up to an empire without giving the empire a legal excuse to execute them. He was outlining a third way between silent submission and violent rebellion. He was showing them how to use the oppressor's own rules against the oppressor. And that one word changes everything. What comes next reframes everything before it. Nonviolent resistance in the first century was not about refusing to fight, but about refusing to lose. Reading scripture this way shifts the focus from private morality to public truth-telling. It reveals that the teachings of Jesus were deeply practical for people trapped in systemic injustice. The text invites us to look past the surface of familiar words and find the sharp edges hidden underneath. The offered cheek was never a surrender. It was a mirror.